A very good afternoon to everyone who is tuning in with us. A good morning, of course, to those who are in the Caribbean and the Americas, and of course, good evening to everyone who is based in Asia. My name is Dennis. I'm going to be your show host today, and today we're going to be discussing. First of all, allow me to introduce you quickly, Mr. Rupert Gather, who is the Executive Chairman of the InvestUK Group. And today we'll be discussing the investing in Great Britain and what has changed dramatically in the last few years because of the BREXIT, because of the closed borders, and so on. And the chairman of the InvestUK, Mr. Rupert Gather, who has obviously vast expertise, will be enlightening us about some of the most anticipated and some of the most popular programs in the United Kingdom.
Well, I'll certainly try, Dennis. I'll certainly try.
I'm sure you can. And just before we kick in, I just was we were wondering, of course, from where is our audience, and I'm just going to launch a quick poll. If you can just spare a couple of seconds and pinpoint and choose which region you're coming from, so we can see how is it going with us. And while we are doing that, I wanted to quickly give a bit of a further introduction about who Rupert is and what is his background. Aside from being obviously the executive chairman of InvestUK Group, which is basically a foreign direct investment platform he founded in 2013, he is also a regular speaker at the TEDx. He's and those TEDx speeches of his have more than 500,000 views, and obviously he's also an evangelist for the UK enterprise economy, and he does also act on a pro bono basis for the Department of Education. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rupert.
That's absolutely right, and there's very important links with education and migration by investment. So those two sit together very nicely, but that's really charity work working for schools in the UK.
And if I'm not mistaken, you are focusing on improving education outcomes for disadvantaged children, is that right?
That's right. I think a lot of countries have an imbalance in education. Most of the reputation for education for the UK is really with the private school system, which of course is a big draw for immigrants into the UK, and the universities. Where my charitable work is involved is with the state schools, and particularly those in poorer areas of the UK, where there's a big need to try and level up some of that education to the high standards that exist in, for example, the private sector.
Well, I mean, that's certainly fascinating, or at least that does sound to me. While we were giving an amazing introduction of yourself, we have received the results, and obviously everyone can see them now on their screens. I mean, we have obviously most of our audience coming in from the European and Africa, and we have a couple of 30% of our attendees are coming from the Asia Pacific, which is a nice touch, and we'll have just a little bit coming from the West, from Americas. So that's basically our audience for today. So let's kick it in. As you might have seen from the registration, our title for today's session is Myth Busting for UK Innovator Visa, which is, as I said, an interesting thing to discuss. Let me just kick in with the first question that would definitely be important for our audience. The UK Innovator Visa was replaced by the Entrepreneur Visa, and one might just see this
other way around. Entrepreneur Visa.
UK Innovator Visa replaced the Entrepreneur Visa. Sorry, yes. You're correct. So I was saying that one might see them as similar and or somewhat similar, but in reality, it's completely the opposite. Maybe you can enlighten us, Rupert, about what is the difference between the two.
Sure. Well, it came as quite a surprise to the industry that the Entrepreneur Visa was removed in April 2019, because in most people's perception, the Entrepreneur Visa was quite successful. There were about 2,000 cases a year, Entrepreneur Visa, and my company, InvestUK, was very active with that, helping people source investments and put their investment qualifying investment strategies together. I think the reason for the change was that the British government took the view that this should be less about the companies and more about the people. Now, what that meant was, whereas previously it was quite easy to do a third-party investment, and in fact 80% of the applicants under the entrepreneur visa invested into an existing business. Under the innovator visa, that's turned on its head. Now 80% of people set up their own business, and only 20% invest into an existing business. And we'll come back to the slightly sensitive area of investing into an existing business. So the whole purpose of the program was to encourage individuals as opposed to encourage the investment. Now we do actually have a slide, Dennis, see what the impact of that was. If you get that, put that slide up on the screen, yeah? Now, what you see is there's a little bit of runoff in Q2 2019, where you've got about 900 cases in that quarter. But you can see that it falls off the edge of a cliff, literally. It just disappears right down to 50 cases a quarter from 900 cases a quarter. And this was a very dramatic fall that people, I suppose, you might expect with every new program, but I think this was unusually large as people were trying to understand it. Now that the program has matured, we're looking at about 100 a quarter of cases, but maybe we might expect 500 in the course of the year. So in other words, the innovator visa in its current form, as it's evolving, is about 20 to 25% as popular as the entrepreneur visa was when it was mature. And I think it's a legitimate question to say, why is that? And secondly, no doubt the government will want to review it to see, do they have to make some amendments to fill the gap, as it were. Okay.
But I forgot to mention in the meantime, while we're talking, something came up. In case if anyone in attendance would like to ask a question to Rupert, you're obviously more than welcome to do so by submitting a question on the widget on your right. So that will be passed on to us, and we obviously will be pleased to clarify any queries you may have. Now, let's move on to the question number 2, and that's definitely a question that I would be keen to get an answer for. The innovator visa, even the title of it, is only suitable for applicants with innovation idea in the field of technology. Does it really require people to be tech geeks? Because it does sound like it, but obviously it requires clarification from an expert like you.
That's a very interesting question, and I think it's one of the main reasons why the application rate is so low. And also one of the reasons I was keen to do this webinar, which we've called myth busting, because I think it is one of the myths that surrounds the innovator visa, that this is a visa just for tech geeks. And we are full of admiration for tech geeks, of course we are, but the reality is most of the population isn't a tech geek. Most of the population are just regular business people, regular aspirant entrepreneurs who want an opportunity. Now, it does vary endorsing body to endorsing body. And I'll just explain the endorsing body system for those who don't know. What the government used to do under the entrepreneur program was that there was a team of people in Sheffield who would assess a business idea, a business plan about an investment into an existing business, and then pass or fail it. And the government took the sensible view that they weren't really qualified to make those assessments. So when they introduced the innovator visa, they appointed about 40 endorsing bodies with experience in investment and early stage businesses to make effectively a recommendation to the Home Office is something meeting the criteria. Now within the InvestUK group, we do actually have an endorsing body, and we'll come on to the relationship between those two a little bit later. But the point is that the endorsing body is an independent body that's making an objective assessment as to whether the applicant's idea, the founder, we call them, is meeting the criteria. Now, the criteria are very well drawn out insofar as it says you've got to have an idea that is innovative, viable, and scalable. It says nothing about technology at all. Innovative, viable, and scalable. And if you think about it, you can have an innovative way of making a sandwich, you can have an innovative way of having a haircut, and therefore there is no barrier to technology. And in fact, of the many cases that we do, pure technology endorsements we make is about 15% of the total. So the rest of the innovation is in all sorts of sectors. Could be manufacturing, could be retail, could be fashion, could be services, it could be recruitment, could be clean energy, all sectors. So there's no limit on the sectors that can be applied. Now, clearly, most businesses, nearly all businesses, are tech enabled. So I'm drawing a distinction between a business that uses the internet or uses tech in a normal way to a business that is a tech business like AI or coding or something that's very, very sophisticated. So we encourage applicants from all across the spectrum, and we don't find, there's so many good ideas out there, we don't find innovation becomes a particular challenge. Viability can normally be addressed by investment. So the rules say that there is a relatively low minimum investment threshold, but we encourage a slightly higher investment threshold really to emphasize and enforce the viability of a project. So in our experience, the real challenge is scalability. And you can get an innovative business. Let's talk about haircuts for a moment. Okay, you can have an innovative way of making a haircut, of making haircuts. You can have a viable way of making haircuts because you just make sure you've got enough money to see it through. But of course, listeners will appreciate that it's very hard to have a scalable business in haircuts. So that's really the barrier, and that's where I'd encourage clients to look and think about scalability as really the driving force.
I really like the idea of having an innovative way of making a sandwich. I can qualify for that, that's for sure. What fascinates me personally as well about the Innovator Visa is the price tag. But before we touch upon on this, I just wanted to launch a quick poll for our audience to express their thoughts. I mean, I'm sure that someone would be aware as to what is the requirement, what is the financial element requirement. But I just wanted to see, and I think Rupert, that would be indeed interesting to see how much knowledge our audience has with regards to the price tag or investment, if you like, required for Innovator Visa. So you have a couple of options to choose from, and we would appreciate your thoughts with regards to the Innovator Visa. So we're collecting responses so far, and while we do that, I just wanted to touch upon the last important piece of Rupert's biography, which I forgot to mention. Apologies for that. And that Rupert is also, aside from being the chairman of the InvestUK, Rupert is also chairman of the Challenger Multi-Academy Trust, if I pronounce that correctly.
That's right. That's a school trust, an education trust, which we were talking about earlier, which is very important to me. And as I did touch on before, when we look at the motivations why people choose the UK, which is not really the topic today, but it's just interesting to think about it.
Yeah.
Education comes out number one or number two spot as to why people are choosing the UK. Obviously, the English language helps, the stability of the property market helps, the fact that we are a G7 country, that we're the 5th biggest economy in the world, we're a permanent seat on the Security Council, and not to everybody's delight, but to some people's delight, including my own, I have to say, is we're now Brexited out of the European Union So it really is a fully independent country, free to make its own way in the world. And that's obviously the exciting thing about being in migration, because we want to attract talent to join us on that journey.
I mean, it's quite fascinating. I mean, you have such a diverse portfolio, and you basically, even, you know, I mean, there's another example of how investment migration industry serves a good cause towards the country, because even with the innovative visa, you're basically bringing in a lot of talent at the end of the day. Speaking of the innovative visa, Rupert, I have some positive news for you, because we seem to have 80% of our audience taking it correctly.
Very good.
The answer. So
I think, yeah, that question was a bit of fun, really, because it's a remarkable thing that as long as the application is handled correctly and the person is suitably qualified, is that the innovator visa is remarkably quick and remarkably cheap. And you were saying earlier that you weren't aware of any program in Europe that was quite as cheap and quick.
There aren't, I mean, there are various ways and pathways, but really and truly, this is essentially the lowest threshold required for financial investment, you know, as spot on.
I just want to touch before we leave that point completely. I did mention this point about viability. And although 50,000 is the minimum investment, normally when the endorsing body is assessing a business plan, they would expect to see availability of capital greater than 50,000, because it's going to be very hard to prove to an endorsing body's satisfaction that 50,000 is enough to see a business through to scalability. It doesn't mean that the money has to be invested in the business on day one, but it is very helpful if clients can show that they've got access to additional capital if it's needed as the business projects. The other thing,
another question, by the way, on this, on the business, because it's good that you've mentioned that. Since we are touching upon the financial threshold, maybe you can enlighten us if one can invest into existing business under the innovative visa.
That's a very good question. I'm going to come back to that question. And before I do, I just want to touch on the startup visa. Many people will be aware of the startup visa. And the way it works is a startup visa is, should we say, an entry-level visa for people who are not very experienced entrepreneurs. It's principally aimed at recent graduates from universities, where there's a 2-year period where one can get used to running a business before one switches to the innovator visa, which is the pathway to permanent residence. And interesting, the startup visa requires no investment. Now, if you think about, let's say you had a business in floristry, you're going to be a florist with a startup visa. Actually, you don't need the money, because all you need is a pair of scissors and a bucket. But of course, you come back to the same issue, is about how you're going to make that business viable without an investment. Well, possibly, but how you're going to make it scalable without an investment, that's tricky. So really the purpose of the investment is to show the viability and the scalability, even with the startup visa. So that's how the program is developed. Now let's look at this question, Dennis, about investing into existing businesses. Now, the short
before you touch upon, sorry, Rupert, before I interrupt you, sorry to interrupt, before we touch upon this, I just wanted you to address a question from the audience in this regard, because it is an important point to mention. One of our attendees has asked the question that a £50,000 investment is quite a low investment, according to his opinion, to ensure a 3-year growth for a business. And he's suggesting that the real requirement is actually £250,000. What are you going to say on this?
I would agree that it's going to depend on the idea, because of course some business ideas are much more capital intensive than other business ideas. But I would think if you can strongly encourage clients to at least demonstrate access, that they've got access to £200,000 to £250,000, they probably need to invest £50,000 on day one but it will really strengthen their business case if they can demonstrate they've got access to more capital, even if that's from friends and families, or from, they might have some property that's possible for them to sell if they needed to. This kind of thing helps the narrative, because they've got to demonstrate to the endorsing body that they do have this innovative, viable and scalable idea. And as the listeners has correctly said, £50,000 is a big ask to make that that case really convincing. But at the end of the day, it's going to vary business case to business case.
Yeah, totally. All right. So, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to answer your question about investing into an existing business.
There you go. I mean, I'm coming back to that. So, can one invest into existing business under the Innovator Visa at all?
Well, the short answer is no, you can't. It's designed for founders, and the clue's in the title. If you're a founder, you are starting your own business. So if you are investing into somebody else's business, by definition, you're not the founder. So I think the presumption is not, but I did say that 80% people start their own business for that reason, but 20% do not. 20% invest into an existing business. And here's the thing, is that a normal person doing a normal business startup in a foreign country would be very unwise to try and do it on their own. In other words, it's completely rational and completely commercial, and therefore well within the spirit and letter of the rules, to try and find a local partner that you can do business with, that you can hook up with, that you can partner with, that you can joint venture with. And I think we do sometimes have trouble with the Home Office explaining the difference between a, should we say, a passive investment into an existing business, very much like the old entrepreneur visa, which in my view is very different from a investment alongside a joint venture partner or a local partner in order to create a more powerful business. And we often see good cases where the founder has the idea, and that, I'll give you an example. That we had a founder who came from Hong Kong for the B&O program, who had designed a new way of retrofitting an electric bicycle pack onto a standard bicycle. Okay, so you could take a standard bicycle and you could retrofit it, make an electric bicycle.
Quite convenient thing, I guess.
Yeah, quite a convenient thing, and that was innovative. Now, what he needed, so he had the innovation, and he had the design, he had the engineering, the samples, and everything else like that. But what he needed was a local partner who had, first of all, access to the UK bike market, and secondly, and most importantly, had facilities and workshops for him to do his business from. Because if you think about it, the really capital-intensive bit is building the workshops. And so we put him in touch with, and he did a deal with, which involved a bit of investment into the other business, the biggest bicycle maintenance company in the UK that does the maintenance for the Metropolitan Police and the National Health Service bicycles. And it was a great collaborative deal. And on the back of his innovation, that company was able to win the contract for the Metropolitan Police to retrofit Metropolitan Police bicycles as electric bicycles. So if you ever see any fat policemen who haven't been bicycling, they've been on an electric bicycle instead, then that's all our fault. But the illustration is that these collaborative deals really do work. They have to be very carefully designed, and they have to be carefully drawn and carefully selected so that there is an investment into an existing business, but it's done in a very collaborative way.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you know, it has to be at the innovative visa thing has to be attended from all the angles, essentially.
Yeah, and that's why InvestUK, for example, we have currently 200 companies on our books that we've pre-screened who are looking for collaborative ventures with international founders. And of course, you have to have a very, very close fit with the sector, because essentially what we're doing is we're actually organizing a joint venture with a company so that it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, so you could basically also provide that kind of service. You'll pre-screen the idea.
Yeah, so the founder comes to us with the idea, and then we help them develop the idea, localize the idea, and sometimes we might say, well, in order to get this idea to really work in the UK, you need a UK local partner because it's going to be too difficult and too hard to get that market breakthrough just all on your own. And frankly, Dennis, if I was doing the equivalent visa in China, if I was moving to China under a Chinese Innovator Visa, I would jolly well want to have a local partner.
By all means.
To work with, rather than sit there on my own hoping that it's all going to be a great success. So it's a perfectly natural thing, and I think that's how we have to view it, as a perfectly natural commercial activity.
So the bottom line, answering the question, that it's a yes and no at the same time. You can't really invest into existing business, but you need to invest into existing business with your intellectual capital, basically.
Essentially, yeah. And you just need a good partner to be able to put the deal together in a way that's within the letter and spirit of the Home Office rules, but is recognised as the commercial reality.
Yeah. One of the last questions I have is that a couple of times you did mention the endorsing body. And I understand that the InvestUK group does operate the endorsing body, Innovate in Britain, which is IIB in abbreviation. Can you enlighten us as to how active is this endorsing body and so on?
Yeah, it's very active indeed. I think we're probably the biggest endorsing body. We're doing about between 20 and 25% of all endorsements are done by Innovate in Britain. Thanks for the slide there. Let's go back to that slide.
Yep.
Dennis there. So viewers will see the blue is endorsements that we've done. The orange is the growth of the program, which, as I said, is roughly 100 a quarter.
It's quite a proportion that the IIB is holding, I should say, is it?
Yeah. No, we're very active, but we've got to bear in mind that we've been at this a long time. We've been at this 6 or 7 years, so we're very well known in the industry. That we are quite a big company. So the fact is, InvestUK is in the group, Innovate in Britain's in the group, but we can space them out. They don't really talk to each other. It's a very independent process, and deliberately so. We've hardwired the independence into it to make sure it's completely objective. But it is successful. It has, it has its own rejection rate. We probably reject about 20 to 30% of the applicants who get to the interview stage. Obviously, many more are rejected before they even get to the interview stage. But I'm very pleased that of the endorsements that Innovate in Britain makes, 97% of them are approved for entry clearance. And that's pretty remarkable.
Quite a number.
Yeah, because we're making a recommendation to the Home Office, and 97% of the time, the Home Office is agreeing with us, which means that we're obviously doing something right, because we are putting forward strong business cases with strong founders. Some of them, not all of them, some of them have got some consultancy advice from a different bit of the business, InvestUK, in order to localize their business plan, do market research, and that kind of thing, as any firm of accountants would. But InvestUK has no role in the endorsement process, and shouldn't do. That's exactly what the rules are there
for. Totally. Look, whilst I just want to remind the audience that if you have any questions to Rupert about the Innovator Visa or about any other immigration path with the UK, I'm sure Rupert will help you. In the meantime, Rupert, my personal question to you, I mean, it's all great that we are covering the theoretical and the business aspect of the sector, and it does indeed great that you can enlighten us about that. But maybe that would be definitely interesting to hear for the audience, and especially for myself, that maybe you can give us a couple of success stories as to, I mean, the message that the IMC is lately delivering to the industry is that we're trying to showcase that the investment migration sector does help the states, does help the economies and the society. So do you have any like examples that you can share that might be interesting to hear about, some of the ideas that help the state?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting question. We monitor two figures. So we monitor the net figure that people are directly investing when they make their application, because that's in their business plan. They say they're investing 250,000 or 100,000, whatever. So we monitor those. We monitor those figures, and we've done around about 400 cases on the entrepreneur and the innovator thing. So we've obviously invested a fair amount of money in the direct investment, but of almost more interest is what is the follow-on investment that is a constant. And sometimes this follow-on investment is foreign, and sometimes it's domestic. So if you added it all up, we've been responsible for about £250 million worth of investment. And
that's since 2013 you're referring to, right?
Yeah, and we've created about 4,000 jobs. We track the number of jobs we create, and that's very important. But
wow,
specific case studies. We've got, for example, there's a wonderful business called Top Hat, which is the automation of house building in a factory. So it's called volumetric house building, where they build houses in a factory. And a couple of our clients were the very early stage investors in that business, that subsequently went on to raise additional money and sold for £50 million, really all based on the original investment. That was in fact an entrepreneur, but it's the same idea. We've recently been told, which I'm really thrilled about, is that a Indian client of InvestUK's, who was endorsed by Innovating Britain, had an innovative idea on carbon capture. He was a PhD student from Cambridge, and he did one of these local partner deals where he set up a technology business that was advising a larger energy business on carbon capture. And his technology business, which was sitting within this wider group, was an enormous success in carbon capture, and has just received investment of 80 million, 78 million to be precise, into carbon neutral power generation in the north of England. Now, it's those sorts of case studies we really like, because the actual investment is pretty small. In this case, this guy invested 200,000, so it wasn't a big investment, but his investment of 200,000 was a direct catalyst for a further investment of 80 million, 78 million.
Wow.
In order to create this carbon neutral energy cycle. So we do try and pass this message on to the Home Office to say, whatever you think about this scheme, we think it's really working. We think the quality of the people coming in has improved, the quality of the ideas has improved, and those ideas and those people are attracting lots of more investment, which really drives the UK enterprise economy.
Totally. I mean, it's definitely a very good example to pass on to the policymakers, that this is how the industry works. It's the best, one of the best examples of it, isn't it? Rupert, we have the last question, and unfortunately then the time is running out, but it is certainly not the least question. Due diligence. It is a very hot topic in the industry, and it is of course important in any investment migration sector. And one of the attendees of ours has asked, what are the due diligence processes when it comes to Innovator Visa, and how are they addressed?
What problems?
No, it's not the problems. What are the due diligence measures applied in the case of Innovator Visa? How does the processing works from this perspective, from the risks and from the background verifications and checks? It's like, what are the due diligence procedures in place?
Sorry, I misunderstood. Well, there's obviously two bits of due diligence that are very important that go side by side. One is about the money, and one is about the person. Okay, so any Innovator Visa application is going to involve an investment. And first of all, we need to make sure that the money is clean, good capital via standard anti-money laundering checks to make sure that that is fine. In terms of the company, well, in terms of the business idea, we will make many clients choose to go via InvestUK to have their business checked out to see whether they think it's going to be viable. And that at that point, InvestUK can make some recommendations, or can say apply directly to Innovate in Britain. And that process, then the main assessment is done by Innovate in Britain. Obviously, a lot of people apply directly to Innovate in Britain. Most people do apply directly to Innovate in Britain. That's absolutely fine. And then the assessment will be made. So the first thing is a screening process, an algorithm that can basically look for some key words, some key attributes of a business to check whether it's innovative and viable and scalable. Once those processes have been done, then it goes through to a manual assessment process where the business plan is read and where the assessment has been made. And then those candidates who have got through that stage are then interviewed. Now, what we will typically do is we have an advisory council of specialists in various different sectors. So if we don't have the expertise in-house, we can always call in the expertise from our advisory council. And then there is an interview process, and very often 2 interviews, varies between 1 and 2 interviews, where the applicant, the founder, is really quizzed in great detail about their business plan, and so we'd expect them to really understand their business plan very well indeed. Now, if they are put forward for endorsement, they're given an endorsement reference number, and then typically they hand the endorsement reference number to their immigration lawyer, who will then use it to put the application into the Home Office. Now, there has been a shift. We've seen that many more business founders are interviewed than used to be the case. It used to be only 1 in 10. I think now it's probably 6 or 7 out of 10 are interviewed by the Home Office. And we also have to submit the full business plan, which is, again, no problem. If the Home Office has got the time to read them, we're very happy that they've got the business plans to consider as the evidence. The endorsing body would record the interview that it's done, and they can ask to hear that recording as well. And all these are perfectly sensible checks to make sure that there's no sort of abuse within the endorsing body. But
so it's quite vetted basically at multiple steps, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I would really hope. I mean, we're not setting people up to fail. We want people to succeed. And frankly, most people, if they get any sort of good independent advice, which could either be from an accounting firm, could be a firm like InvestUK, could be an accounting firm, or indeed many people get the advice from their immigration lawyer to say, is my plan likely to succeed? And obviously that advisor can't say yes or no, but it could probably give an indication to say, maybe but you should probably improve this aspect or this aspect or this aspect. And the greatest thing that goes wrong, I find, is when an idea can be really good, but it's not sufficiently localized. Bear in mind, you could have a great idea in Lagos or a great idea in Moscow, and it's not a great idea in London simply because it's already been done in London, or because the weather's different, or the shopping patterns are different. And therefore, what you can do is make some fairly minor adjustments to the business plan.
Yeah.
And then that becomes transformational. So I think it's perfectly legitimate to get advice before one applies to a endorsing body. But of course, no advisor, doesn't matter what they say, no advisor can promise you're going to be endorsed, because they're not able to do that, because the decision is very strictly and rightly with the endorsing body.
Okay, well, I mean, definitely, I'm sure it was beneficial for the audience. It was definitely beneficial for me. I mean, we did cover a couple of very important questions that will hopefully now help our audience to navigate through the Innovator Visa or Entrepreneur Visa in this case, or to at least differentiate between the two. In case if anyone has any questions to Rupert, please feel free to reach out to us. We will obviously put you in touch with Rupert. He will be your guide to any questions you may have. Again, correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm delighted to help, delighted.
Yes, and that should be it. I mean, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. We are at your disposal 24/7, and please stay tuned for next month's session, which will be announced soon. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in, and we wish you...
Thank you very much indeed for moderating, and thank you for all the viewers. I hope you've enjoyed it and found that was interesting for you. And do ask me any questions. Very happy to help.
Very good. Thank you very much, and well, a very good afternoon, evening, morning to everyone.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye-bye.